Hey, so today I'm going to show you how to install Nextcloud. It's a piece of free software, an open source software that you can use to self-host your own cloud services. So it's to replace proprietary services like Dropbox, Google, and Apple. It's got stuff like file hosting and sharing, calendars, chat, etc. And it's all done with plugins, so you can opt into the things that you want installed on the server. And I'm going to show you how to run it on your own Linux VPS. The reason I want to show this is because it's a great piece of software, and I think it's good when people run their own services and we decentralize the internet a bit more. So before we get started, there's a couple of things you'll need to know. The first is how to create your own VPS server. I'm using Dropbox here, and I'm just going to actually kick off this droplet creation. So this is going to set up a VPS for me. I'm just using the lowest one here, and I've got my SSH key selected for my box. And I'm going to go ahead and start that droplet creating. That's just a $5 a month box. You can run Nextcloud on very low, low resource systems, even a Raspberry Pi or something like that. Although if it's on a Raspberry Pi behind a firewall, you won't be able to access it from outside, obviously. So that's why I like to set it up on a VPS that's actually on the internet, so I can get access to it from anywhere. So the other thing you'll need to know how to do is SSH. So once the droplet's created, I'll have to SSH in as root, and I'll do that using the terminal. So you'll need to know those two things, how to create a VPS and how to SSH in. So while we're waiting for that to load, I'll just show you my own droplet, my own Nextcloud instance, which is running here. You can see the file sharing here. So some of these files are shared with other people, and it gives you a link that they can use to connect to and download. There's also things like video conferencing using Jitsi, calendars, which is super useful, contacts. You can have a mail client built in. There's a chat system built in, so my family have been using that. It's a lot of fun. And there's also Android and Windows clients for this. So things like the file syncing, you can run a native client and it just works a bit better. Okay, so that droplet's finished creating now. I'm going to copy the IP address, and then I'm going to SSH in. So I added the key to that when I created it, and I'm just going to SSH to root at the IP address. I'll have to confirm it the first time, and once I'm in there, I can start installing. So I'm just going to use the IP address that's on this box to connect to, but if you have a domain name, you can set up an A record pointing at the IP address. So what I'm going to do is, you can see the IP address is set there, or another way of getting your IP address is just IP addr eth0, sorry, that's wrong, space there, eth0, and okay, it's not called eth0, so this one here anyway. So that's our IP address there. Another way of doing it is there's this dig command where you can dig OpenDNS, and it'll tell you what your IP address looks like from the outside, and so that's given me the same result there. So now we know the IP address. As I said, if you did have a domain name, you can point the A record at that IP address. If you don't have a domain name, there's the services available which will resolve an IP address with a special postfix to the IP address itself. So an example is sslip.io. So we can ping that. That's actually pinging the same box. Another example is there's one called nip.io. And there's, oh, that didn't work. Okay, maybe that one, oh, sorry, it's supposed to be a ping there. Yep, so that's pinging the same box. And another one is traffic.me. So that's another way that you can resolve to the same box. So all of those are valid domain names that you can use in lieu of having an actual domain name that you've purchased and pointed at that IP address. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and use the SSLIP one and start installing Nextcloud. So what I'm going to do is snap install Nextcloud. That's my first move. And that is using Ubuntu's snap command and going into the background and downloading the stuff it needs to deploy Nextcloud on the server. And that installs everything. So like database, anything else, PHP, all the stuff that Nextcloud depends on to run, this command will install a snap that contains everything you need, basically. And so once that's done, I'm going to say, I'm actually going to run the manual install command. So that installing that gives me a couple of different commands, which I'll show you in a second. That's just starting up now. And there we go. So now I can say nextcloud.manual-install, and I'm going to give a username of Chris M, that's my login, and a very terrible password. Definitely don't copy me and do this because your box will get owned immediately. But I'm going to give it a password of password because I know that I'm going to delete this droplet as soon as I've done this demonstration. So yeah, we do that, and basically that goes away and configures it with this username and password that we can use to log into the box. And then once that's done, the final thing we'll do is configure the domain name that we want to use. So again, as I said before, I'll use this SSL IP domain, and the command we're going to use is nextcloud.occ. That manual install command is taking a minute. I'm not quite sure why. I guess it's got a lot of stuff to do in the background. But okay, there, it's done. So nextcloud.occ config system set trusted domains 1 value equals, and then I've got this value here from before, so this is a fully qualified domain name that points back at this IP. I'm just going to put that there. Basically what that's doing is telling Nextcloud this is the domain that I want to use to access it. And so the final thing I can do is enable HTTPS and get a lets-encrypt certificate so that it's running securely. So I'm going to say nextcloud enable-https lets-encrypt. And lets-encrypt will allow you to use these SSL IP addresses with no problem at the moment. So yeah, there's a bunch of conditions here that need to be met, and we know all those things are true. And so I'll put in my email address here. If you have any questions, you can feel free to email me there. And now it's asking for my domain name. So again, I'll paste in that same value as I used before, and that will go away and fetch the certificates for this box and make sure that when it's accessed from outside, it's completely secure. Now, once that's run, there's also a couple of other things you probably want to do. One of them is to enable Firewall. So UFW is a good firewall that comes built in by default. So we're just going to say allow OpenSSH, UFW allow OpenSSH, and we're going to say UFW allow ports 80 and 443 because those are the ones that Nextcloud is running on. Those are the standard web ports for secure web access and unsecure. So now I'll enable that, and I didn't get shut out. Great. So the final thing you can do is make some swap space. If you feel like there's not enough memory on the box, swap can make up for that. I generally find it's a good idea to add swap space. I'm not going to bother doing that right now. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to go to our newly created box and check that it's working. So I'll open a new tab and I'll hit that URL, and hopefully it's all ready to roll. Unless, of course, it isn't. Something's not working. Ah, there we go. It's coming up fine. So now I gave it that username of Chris M and password, and I can log in with Chris M and password. And the final thing I'll show you once we've logged in is how you install the Nextcloud apps. So it took me a little while to figure out how to do that and set up additional users. So you might want to set up users for family members or people in your company, and that's quite easy to do. So as soon as we're logged in, I will show you that bit. I'm just going to go ahead and close that tab. And well, actually, I'll show you on my existing Nextcloud instance because that's taking a minute to load. So to add new users, you go up here and you say, to add new apps, you go here to this menu and say apps. This one's actually logged in. So the first time you log in, you get this nice kind of like splash and a bit of stuff about how it works. But I'm going to skip all that. And so to add new users, you go to users from this menu here. And you can quite easily create new users. And then these apps that appear up here, the default ones are dashboard, files, photos, and activity. And you can add new apps, which I'll just show you in a second. So, but if we want to add a new user, we go, how do we do this? A new user. And type the username bob at bob.com. And default quota, add the user. Bob. Come on. Okay. Password requirements. Good password requirements, not like the one that I created. So that's how you create a new user. So now Bob can come along and log in. You tell him the password. And the final thing that I'll show you is how to add some more of these apps. So as I showed you on mine, I've got, calendar, contacts, mail, this Talk, conferences. And Talk, by the way, comes with its own app that can run on your phone. So it's kind of like having your own little WhatsApp that you can share with your family or your company or whatever. And over here, we could say add apps. And this is basically how you add the apps. So you can search for apps. Yeah, you've got these different sections here, but you can search for one like, let's say we want to find calendar, and that'll show us the calendar. And so we just go here and say download and enable, and that installs this calendar here, and it'll pop up here, up the top, straight away. So you can see it's very easy to install these apps. And like I said, they pretty much replace most of the proprietary services you'd use, like calendars, file syncing, stuff like that. And so if you have, say, an Android phone running F-Droid, you can do completely without, big company services, which is quite a nice thing, I think. So now I'm going to go ahead and destroy that droplet. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoy creating your own Nextcloud servers.